We are just 1 month away from No Time to Die, and I cannot be more hyped for it at this point. But in the Bond Film of the Week series, we've reached the epitome of one of the franchise's Bond films that often gets called out for being the worst one. You've all probably seen my recapping episode on it, so I really don't have much deeper I can bury this movie. But I am sure my supporters are all eager to share a thing or two about this one.
Hi. How was the gene therapy?
Oh, very well, thanks.
Good, thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Die Another Day, 2002. Directed by Lee Tamahori and starring Pierce Brosnan.
That was good. I can take it from here. Thanks, Daniel.
You're welcome, Jeroen.
Die Another Day. One thing I've noticed about some of the movies considered the worst in the franchise, Diamonds Are Forever, A View to a Kill, and Die Another Day, is that they all have, in some way, this feeling of like, hey, remember Goldfinger? Diamonds Are Forever had it with like the same director, the same actor, the same singer. A View to a Kill had a similar villain plot. And Die Another Day, it contains multiple references to much better Bond movies. Truth be told, I actually did kind of have a little bit of like dumb fun with this movie. My advice is to think of this as like a Chinese co-production. Like that Jason Statham movie from a few years back, The Meg, with the giant shark. Yeah, think of Die Another Day like that. And I think the creative choices will make a lot more sense. Some of the other reviews will probably go into a lot more detail about why this movie is terrible, but it is possible for a movie to be both terrible and kind of enjoyable, either in spite of or because of its badness. And I think I need some time to decide which of those two categories Die Another Day falls into. I'll say one thing this movie's good for: spotting all the references to previous Bond films. I have way too much free time. Please help.
Woo! Now it's time for Die Another Day, the fourth and final Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan as Bond. This is regarded by many as one of the worst films in the series, and I kinda have to agree with that sentiment, because even the positives in this movie I have reservations about. Except for Brosnan, I guess. He's fine as usual. There's not much to say there. But firstly, I like the idea of Bond being captured and tortured for 14 months in North Korea, because one, it kind of sets up a character arc for Bond in that he needs to get back on his feet. And two, it also sets up a revenge plot, because he was set up in North Korea and he has to find out who betrayed him. But it's not really used to its full potential, because halfway through the movie he's basically just rehired by the MI6 and sent on his mission, and it's just business as usual from there. And also, much of the action is pretty well choreographed and well shot in this movie, but many of the action scenes, they're just so over the top that it gets tiring. For example, the infamous kite surfing in the tsunami, and also the cast in this movie, aside from Brosnan, it's not very good. We have Halle Berry as Jinx, who's written as this spunky, capable agent, and equal for Bond, a la Wei Lin, but she's given some really bad one-liners, and her delivery, it's so forced that it's cringe-inducing. And we have Toby Stephens as Gustav Graves, actually Colonel Moon in disguise, and he's really hammy and not in a fun way like Elliot Carver, because he's presented in a very serious light, but he's clearly not as intimidating as the movie wants him to be. And also that RoboCop Palpatine suit thing he's wearing in the end of the movie, like it just gets too sci-fi for Bond, in my opinion. Also, while this movie starts out like sort of gritty revenge plot, almost like License to Kill, it basically just goes. It turns into a very by the numbers take over the world scheme, and it's also that it just borrows a few too many elements from earlier Bond movies. Like there's a really distracting nod to Goldfinger with the laser, and near the end we have an equivalent of the Jeep out of the plane from The Living Daylights just cranked up to 11, and the Gustav Graves satellite, it's basically the same as Blofeld's satellite from Diamonds Are Forever. It was probably a good idea for Eon to go back to basics with Casino Royale, the next movie, because they probably realized they were not on the right track here. But poor Brosnan, he deserved a better finale.
Oh boy, we've come to this one, haven't we? This is a hurdle I must cross. Okay, the film begins with promise. Bond is on a mission. He gets caught out, he tries to escape, but he gets caught out again and is imprisoned by the North Koreans. So far, so good. The credit sequence depicts Bond's internment, and it's very imaginative, especially when you press the mute button on your remote control, having not to hear that song. Bond gets traded in for Zhao, again a pretty good scene. Bond gets evaluated, and M decides to send Bond to the Falklands for further evaluation. You're of no use to anyone now. What a bitch. However, this is a pretty good plot. Is Bond still relevant? Sadly, the film never really explores this. Bond obviously escapes, gets to Hong Kong, makes contact with undercover operatives. Again, a very good idea. Bond has gone rogue and is counting on his rival contacts. He gets to Cuba, gets a revolver, and he drives in what I believe is a Cadillac Eldorado convertible. Our man in Havana lights, and it's great to see old school espionage at play. But then it all goes sour. Because out of the water comes one of the most beautiful women to ever grace a Bond film. And then some shit happens. Sorry, I tried, but there's no point in dwelling on it. Die Another Day is one of the worst Bond films ever. All I have to say is that Gustav Graves' dialogue consists of slogans.
Global warming is a terrible thing.
Whereas Rosamund Pike and Halle Berry are absolutely stunning. And the car chase between Bond and Zhao is okay, I guess. But yeah, there's no denying it. That song, that film is just plain awful.
How good you are. I'm so good. Especially when you're bad.
No, you're just a bad film. When Die Another Day was released, it was pretty much already dated. I mean, it came along 2 months after the release of Bourne Identity, and as we all know, that film pretty much changed the genre. Brosnan, in general, 7 years and 4 films in, I have to say I'm very indifferent when it comes to him. In my opinion, the man never really made the role his own. He didn't bring anything new to the role and was just going by his looks and how it shaped the image of Bond. I remember during his tenure to criticise Brosnan seemed sacrilege, but now it seems almost inevitable, which is sad in a way since he did bring Bond back to the centre stage of popularity. Also, I can criticise his performances, but I have a feeling always he wanted to do something different with the character. And judging from his performances in The Fourth Protocol, the film he did after Remington Steele was cancelled back in the 80s, Brosnan could have easily done something special with the role. In 1998, Eon finally got the rights to Casino Royale, and it was assumed that this would have been the film that Brosnan would have ended his Bond tenure on. Alas, it was not meant to be. However, I can't help but wonder how it would have worked if a gritty adaptation of Casino Royale took place with Brosnan in the role. In my opinion, it might have actually worked, and it certainly would have given me an excuse to tolerate Brosnan. Brosnan was popular. He helped carry the series to a post-Cold War world, but the term "what if" will always be attached to him.
So I thought that my Die Another Day review that I did at the Alps was missing a ton of information, so I went back here to my beloved Bond location, and I'm gonna review Die Another Day. And by the way, on my first reviews, it took me ages to set up the camera and everything on the tripod. I have the tripod with me, but today I really don't feel like doing it because already getting up here is quite physically challenging because there is no path leading up here. And so I'm not really into setting up the camera. I'm gonna hold it in my hand. Anyway, Die Another Day is often considered as the worst film in the series, or at least one of the worst films in the series. I feel the same way. Although, let's not forget that every single Bond film in the series has ups and downs. On Die Another Day, the downs are the bad CGI, the bad plot, a bad villain, yet also not very memorable, and the terrible dialogue, which is not written well, or the title song. Now that's mainly all the bad stuff that comes into my head, and now onto the good stuff, because from my point of view, there definitely is some. What's good about Die Another Day is, for example, Jinx and Miranda Frost. The girls lift this movie up big time for me, as I'm a huge fan of Jinx, who is in my top 5 favorite Bond girls. The soundtrack by David Arnold is excellent too. I have to praise it. The pre-title sequence is great, and I also really like the Cuba scenes, but afterwards when the movie goes to Iceland, it does go down and it gets bad. Now, I agree, as a Bond film, this film is not good. But if it would have been like, I don't know, Star Wars or Power Rangers, because that's what the movie feels more like, instead of Bond, I guess it would have been a bit better. But despite being absolutely ridiculous and completely over the top, I have to say that Die Another Day is at the very least damn entertaining. But overall, as a Bond film, this film is really bad, and I give it 1 out of 10. I rank it all the way at the bottom in the last 5.
So, Die Another Day, here we are, number 20. It's the worst thing imaginable.
No, but in all seriousness, really, this film is shockingly terrible, but I think it can be saved from a couple of actors. Pierce Brosnan, Dame Judi Dench, and Halle Berry, I think they pretty much kind of saved this film. Toby Stephens looks like he's having great fun, though, and I kind of like it when a villain really hams it up. That's just me. But the unsung heroes of this really are David Arnold. Fantastic score, as always. I mean, he always brings his A game with this. Even if the film's terrible, always get a good score out of him. And second unit director Vic Armstrong. I don't feel gets enough love. Pretty much he directed the entirety of the hovercraft chase sequence and the ice chase. 2 of my absolute favourite set pieces from any Bond film that arguably come from the worst film. It's very strange. But yeah, this film is crap. It's just, there's some stuff that's good in there, but you have to wade through the turds first to find the gems.
When it comes to the film Die Another Day, you're better off if you watch it at all just to watch the first hour of it. Everything from the pre-title action scene all the way to Bond getting to the Ice Palace. Beyond that, I don't recommend this film at all for anybody. Mainly since not only having a villain that genetically turns himself Caucasian, just absurd, so is giving Bond an invisible card to be used in a place that really doesn't help him be stealthy, since it's obviously that the visible card is going to be detected from the tracks in the snow. And beyond that, the infamous scene of Bond skiing on the water, the CGI on that is just horrendous. So is the stale one-liners by Halle Berry. What you're better off doing is just throwing it in the trash. and sticking to Everything or Nothing as the final film, quote unquote, for Brosnan.
Okay, so before I start, true story, I was so bored talking about this movie that I did maybe 20 takes, but I was so bored, it was not enjoyable to watch. So I'm gonna do this one really rapidly. First of all, because I'm late doing this video, so I need to do it quite fast, but also because I don't like the movie. At first, when I began to watch the movie, I liked the pre-title sequence. I think it's quite good, and it's quite serious compared to the rest of the movie. And you've got great elements, just as Bond getting tortured, and being imprisoned for 14 months. That's quite a huge thing, and definitely unusual in the series. So it was a good start. I even like the fact that the pre-title sequence takes place during the torture scene. I think it was quite good. But after that, everything went downhill. The plot is not good. The whole thing about genetics and, the main villain being this Korean general in the body of a British billionaire is just silly, and it doesn't work. The two actors don't match. And, I'm going to talk about the cast, but the main villain is one of the main problems of the movie. He's just bad, and I know he's supposed to be over the top, but if you want to do a good villain over the top, just look at, I don't know, like Zorin. Zorin was a great villain over the top, but here it just sounds like an annoying kid, I would say, and it's not enjoyable to watch. Talking about the plot, the two Bond girls are not that great. I mean, the casting is quite good. I like Halle Berry in the role, and I like Miranda Frost as well. On paper, they are good, but the dialogues are really corny, and especially with the Halle Berry character's Jinx. If you want to have a look at the last scene between her and Bond, you would see how bad the dialogue is, and that's a global problem for the movie. The dialogue is one of the words, just corny lines, and that's not enjoyable. The action scenes are not that good. As I said, the pre-title sequence is quite good, but after that, you've got the surf scene, which I don't mind that much, but it's still bad. You've got the last fight is really bad as well, and the only other good thing is the car chase, which is quite enjoyable. The locations are really good, seeing Bond in Cuba and seeing him in a nice palace in Iceland. These places are really creative. The sets are really creative, but they don't use them as much. And so the plot is bad. The action scenes are not that great. The dialogue is really bad. And as I said, it's not, I'm even getting still bored talking about it. It's just bad. I don't like it. So the soundtrack is quite good, but it's a bit more too techno, I would say, for my taste. And I've got a weird relationship with the title track. I know a lot of people despise this song about Madonna, but at the time it was released, I was 4 years old, and I remember listening to the CD when I was really young. So I've got kind of a nostalgic feeling, just thinking about this song and hearing this song, which is a bit weird, but it's definitely not a good song, but kind of a guilty pleasure for me. But as I said, overall the film is bad. Maybe one good point, Brosnan performance is quite good. That's one of the things I would say. But other than that, maybe the locations, and Zhao is quite a good henchman, quite memorable. Doesn't talk a lot, but the design is quite good. Other than that, definitely one of the worst movies. I just don't like it. Alright guys, that's all for today, but I'll see you next week for a much better film, Casino Royale. Okay, take care guys, and I'll see you soon.
And that's it for this week's Bond Film of the Week episode in the lead up to No Time to Die. Would you like to join in on the weekly discussions and be featured with your review as well? Well, join the DBF community on Patreon, get access to my Discord server, as well as receiving other cool rewards.